Welcome to Flip the Script, where innovation meets inspiration. Today, we are joined by Nathan Bucci, the founder of Catalyst. Nathan has boldly pivoted from convention, taking the offbeaten path to carve out his place in the innovation landscape. With a background interning at venture capital firms and launching his own venture, Nathan is passionate about helping people discover their paths in the world of entrepreneurship. Today, we'll dive into his unconventional path and explore how he's shaping the future of entrepreneurship through Catalyst. Welcome to have you on the show, Nathan.
Can you guys maybe send me that intro, because that's way better than any than any bio or anything that I've written for myself. I appreciate that. um,
Definitely.
but thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited.
It's really great to have you, and we'd really love to know about your journey and sort of how you got about to starting Catalyst.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I can dive a little bit more into the details of kind of what you just said in that intro about VC, about starting my own venture. I guess it's been about a couple of years now since I guess, like you said, sort of went off the beaten path. Um, to go all the way back to the beginning, I came into the University of Florida, very, I would say, uneducated about just careers in general, about what career paths I could potentially pursue. I always say that I came to major in wakeboarding and surfing, and in large part, like, that's totally true. Here, look, there's my wakeboard right there. There it is. I brought that down to Florida because I was from Illinois. That was like my number one hobby. I actually did it competitively, and was like, I'm gonna go to Florida where it's warm year round, and I'm gonna wakeboard all the time, and like whatever. I'll go to school, get the grades, and like figure out the job stuff in like 5 years. Um, and basically had a roommate who had a much different mindset going into school. Was like, I'm gonna be an investment banker on Wall Street. I'm gonna go to Evercore, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? What does any of that mean? And but so him being in the business school and me being, I was economics, and he was, so I was in the College of Liberal Arts. He was in the business school. He was like hearing about all these opportunities, to go like to tabling events and blah blah blah. Basically dragged me out to some and convinced me to join this business fraternity. Um, and so there was where I met a bunch of students. They had this 5 week process of basically like getting us immersed into the fraternity, and helping us like meet a bunch of different brothers and things like that, and got to talk to a bunch of people about what they were doing career wise, like their goals and everything. A lot of them were going into consulting, a lot of them sales, some like marketing type roles, but very ambitious people and like very accomplished in terms of getting these internships. So that like totally flipped the switch for me, where like, all the wakeboarding, surfing stuff was officially gone. I was basically just up in my dorm until 4 a.m. every night, like working, trying to get the grades, trying to like apply to internships, make my LinkedIn look right, whatever. Um, and so I would say I spent my whole freshman year very much in the system. I would say so. My mindset at the time was like, I need to be a McKinsey consultant, or else I'm stupid and a failure, basically.
I think we've all been there.
Exactly. And so I think like that's a mindset that a lot of students experience, especially early in your college career. You feel that pressure of like, I have to do something, and I think there are pros and cons to that. I think anything that like, uh, for lack of a better way to say it, anything that lights a fire under your ass and gets you moving towards something is great. But at the same time, I think it's also really important to be intentional about what you're moving to. And so I basically realized over time, like, yeah, I want to be a McKinsey consultant, but honestly, the other things that I sort of want out of life wouldn't really be possible if I were like working 100 hours a week. And so I started to kind of question like the whole sort of system in general, and how everybody was very single mindedly focused on like these entry level jobs at big companies. And it very much shifted after I got my first internship, which was at a financial planning firm, and like great people, no shade of the firm whatsoever. It was as good of an experience as it could have been. Um, but I was really excited to get that internship, and everybody around me was like, "Yeah, dude, you got like an internship freshman year." You know what I mean? Like, dude, you're the man. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm the man." And I I go and do the internship, and basically like learn the painful lesson of like, jobs are just jobs. You know what I mean? And I think in college, like, you get an internship, you secure those experiences, and everybody acts like it's going to be like Disney World 24/7. Um, and in reality, especially like with my major, it was more like just being a spreadsheet warrior, and trying to meet deadlines in terms of the projects, and take way too much caffeine to try to stay awake. And maybe that's not everybody, and that's obviously not everybody's experience, but obviously just kind of going through how my attitude shifted over time, that was definitely a pivotal point. And so right before that, I interned, or I guess technically externed, is what it's called. So maybe you know the company Extern. They like rebranded. They used to be Paragon One, but they ran this externship with HP Tech Ventures, where students would go. They would basically like plug into HP Tech Ventures deal sourcing funnel, and try to send them deals. And honestly, like a ton of students just sort of like go through the motions with the program. But for whatever reason, I was like super invested. I really wanted to learn more about startups. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna like I'm going to go totally ham on this thing. I'm going to find them a company and they're going to invest in it and like it's going to be huge. And so I ended up we had like finals week. I ended up like binging the entire externship over the course of like 2 weeks, 2 like 60-hour weeks basically. Got to pitch to the partner there who was like this super insightful, smart guy. Got to talk to a founder of the company that I was sourcing, and so like those two experiences together. So like talking to the founder and also talking to the VC was like, whoa, um, these people who operate in the space of entrepreneurship, just have a perspective that I've never seen before. They have a different view of like how the world works. Like when we would hear from this guy who was at HP, this partner, um, I would just learn so much every time. I would just like probe and probe with questions to like try to understand this guy's brain better. Basically, he was like a right hand to Steve Jobs in the early days of Apple. This guy, he was like a very early employee of Apple. Um, and yeah, and did a bunch of stuff since then in the startup ecosystem. Super insightful guy. And the founder I met was just like the most passionate dude about his work I've ever met in my entire life. Probably still to this day. He was very interested in like leadership, team dynamics, and so he had this software to help people like measure their team dynamics. Anyway, that was when the switch flipped for me, where I was like, all right, this is where I want to be. In terms of career wise, hopefully in this startup space, around these passionate people. Hopefully one day maybe even like be one of these passionate people. You know what I mean? And I don't know if we're there yet. I definitely am pretty passionate about what I do. Rami knows what I'm talking about, but but
Absolutely.
yeah.
So that's
So that was.
very, yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, go ahead. No, no, go ahead. Seriously.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that was definitely what flipped the switch for me, was like doing an internship, like a 9 to 5 internship, and also doing like a entrepreneurship focused experience and saying like, okay, maybe like this these jobs we're all going towards, like these entry level jobs at big companies, aren't the end all be all. So I went back to school, and everybody's like, "Yes, they are, dude. Like, shut up about this VC stuff. You're stupid, and you're not going to be able to do it." That was pretty much the attitude
Wow.
of other students. I mean, they didn't say that exactly, but
Yeah.
but basically the attitude was like, "Oh, venture capital, yeah, that's for people who have like been in investment banking for 4 years.
Yeah.
Not for you because you're an undergraduate student." And I was like, "Well, let's see, let's find out." Um, so we started this club. It was called Gator Venture Capital. We would basically partner with venture capital firms both in Silicon Valley and in Florida, and we would do pro bono sort of services for them, basically deal sourcing, kind of like the HP thing, or supporting their portfolio companies directly. And so that was me and a co-founder at the time. We worked out this model. Like this model kind of solved a lot of problems for us. When we first thought about a club, we were like, how are we going to make this better than like all the other externships and deal sourcing type things that are already out there? And we were like, oh, we'll just replicate those, but like have a tight community on campus. And so that's what we did. Built a lot of really interesting connections through that, and that was really what like took us off in terms of like being sort of players in the ecosystem, actually getting involved. So it built really great connections for me and my co-founder, obviously, but also for all of our students. We had like 20 in our analyst program, and so they all did like legitimate, basically internships that next spring with VCs. And like I said, that was either deal sourcing or supporting their portfolio companies. Um, but the thing about that experience and like some of the interesting points and like the lessons learned, if I can share some. So one was like I kind of went through that really quick about how that all got started up, but it was a very long process of just like talking and like me and my co-founder like just going back and forth about all these ideas and doing nothing about it for months. So if anybody listening is in that state where it's like, I have an idea, I'm thinking about doing something, haven't actually like taken any steps to make it real. There were a couple things that this showed me about like what it took to do that. So I wrote an essay like a long time ago. It was called Impulsive Productivity, and it was exactly about this. Basically, that like if you're in that state, you're allowed to prioritize whatever the side project is, like whatever the idea that you're not getting to is, because odds are doing that is probably 100 times more productive for like your life, your basically like your achievement of your goals than whatever like the stuff is that you need to do that you don't really want to do. And then if you prioritize that, let's say like, okay, I haven't gotten to this, I'm going to take all of tomorrow and like do some stuff about GVC, whatever, like make a website, um, reach out to some students, see if they want to do it, whatever it is. I'm going to take all of tomorrow and do that. Then, like the next day, you'd probably go back to your other work so much more motivated, knowing that you're closer to your goals. So, yeah, that concept of like impulsive productivity was really important for me to learn in terms of, like I said, kind of blending impulsivity and productivity, like prioritizing the thing that doesn't sound like it should be the priority. But the other thing that I learned from that was that nothing really happened, like nothing concrete really happened until I was talking to a VC, not about partnering, but I sort of just brought it up in discussion, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we would totally do that," and I was like, "Oh great," except that we didn't have like any students or anything yet, and so what that showed me was like one of the best things you can do. And a lot of, there's a lot of wisdom around like, don't tell anybody your plans, move monk mode, whatever, like move in secret when you're built stealth startup, like,
Yeah.
and I get all of that. But I think when you're having trouble like dedicating any time or making meaningful progress, I think making a promise to somebody outside yourself is one of the most productive things you can do. And so our plan was to partner with VCs and like deliver something to them. Uh, and so in that conversation with a VC, I brought up this idea of partnership. They said they were in, but we had literally nothing that we needed in order to make that partnership happen. So it was like, okay, now it's time to go. Like it's go time. And by next semester, we actually had like the whole thing operating. We had so much more confidence knowing that VCs were actually down to do this. Um, so I think that, especially like in terms of startups, starting companies, like talking to customers as soon as possible, but then even like giving them some expectations, I think goes a really long way in terms of like motivating you, because I don't think we're made to be intrinsically motivated, especially like our entire lives plugging into school, like trying to get the
Yeah.
grades, having deadlines all laid out for us. I think the way that you can kind of bridge that from school to startups is, like I said, just to make a promise outside yourself. So yeah, that was kind of a tangent, but just some lessons that were learned around that time that definitely were important. Um, and I guess just to, I don't want to ramble on too long here. So this was about a year ago, that all that a year ago, 2 years, almost 2 years ago, actually. Yeah, wow, almost 2 years ago that all happened. The next spring, we ran the program. Had no idea what we were doing, by the way, none. We were very scrappy. It was a learning experience for us in terms of organization. And then we decided that summer to start Catalyst, the company that I run now, which was sort of a spin-off of Gator Venture Capital. One of the biggest things we learned in GVC and saw was that like students were so interested, just like me when I worked with HP. They were so interested in working with founders directly and getting to interact with those people in a real way. And so the teams supporting the portfolio companies were having a way better time than the teams that were just like making spreadsheets of startups and deal sourcing for VCs. So Catalyst, we only paired students with startups to intern with. Um, and then over time, that basically shifted more and more towards like we help students actually work on their own ideas. Um, so kind of this weird thing of like it turns out that people who are interested in VC are actually interested in startups and also actually interested in like starting their own startups. Like there's sort of this like entrepreneurial bug that lives inside people that like manifests in different ways, but basically always means like they want to run their own thing and work on their own thing.
That's what, yeah.
And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about or if you've experienced like something similar. Um, but for me,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it was like I thought that VC was like the end all be all for me. I was like, I want to be a venture capitalist, but it turned out I just wanted to run something. Like I wanted to build my own ideas and work on something impactful, and I was attracted to like the space where that was running rampant, and maybe didn't think I was qualified at the time to do that. But so long story short, we went through the next year. We ended up interning with an accelerator that summer called Tampa Bay Wave. They're the biggest startup accelerator in the Southeast. Um, Got to meet and work with some really, really interesting people, some amazing people. Basically, everything that I was looking for at the time, right, was working with these really passionate founders. And so through that actually came a connection that helped us secure our jobs at TechStars the following fall. And then we took a gap semester to go and work at TechStars. Uh, and then, like, long story short about that, I actually ended up quitting that job prematurely. So TechStars is an amazing institution. They do. No, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. But the, so TechStars does amazing things. I think TechStars is an amazing institution. They do amazing things for startups. I work there as an associate. Anybody's experience working there as an associate is going to be very different based on the program. So I have absolutely Nothing bad to say about Techstars at all. Just me and like with where I was and the program that I was with. Maybe not even the program I was with, but mostly just where I was career wise. It ended up just being the right time for me to just quit that job. Like I said, about halfway through it, and back to full time Catalyst. That spring, it was time to go back to school, and I was no longer interested in that, so I did not, and that was when I dropped out. And since then, I've been full time on Catalyst. And so how it's evolved over time has it's become this basically this education company, trying to fill this gap that we're talking about, which is every student, a lot of students anyway, get very pigeonholed into this idea of like we have to work these entry level jobs at big companies. If we don't, we're dumb and failures. And there's nothing else. And you don't really get to work on your own ideas unless you're like 10 years into your career and have built capital for that long. And you don't get to take any risk until you have so much money that it's not risky, which doesn't make any sense. But this is what people believe. Um, and Catalyst is like trying to fill this gap by giving people genuine, real, fast, and affordable exposure early on to students so that they can like legitimately in a very real no BS way explore entrepreneurship without the incentives of a school. Like, schools run entrepreneurship programs, but really the school wants them to place at a big company because that's what drives like success for the school. We don't have those ulterior motives. We're a 4-week program. We say like we're going to get you building something. We're going to connect you with a bunch of other people who actually care about this stuff and aren't just looking for a resume boost. And by the end, you're going to be ready to take action on your ideas or ready to join teams of really fast growing startups too, which is something we focus on and something a lot of our students do. So yeah, hopefully that gives a good recap of the past couple of years and how we became what we are now. And like I said, I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions about any of that too.
Yeah, for sure, but like I can also vouch that like I think the program was absolutely amazing. I was actually part of like one of the cohorts, right? And like it was really great, taught like a lot of stuff which I didn't quite know before. So thank you for that and like starting Catalyst. I really wanted like to like touch on like main thing. Like you touched on a lot of things and that was really great. I think you've like answered quite a few of my questions. But like one main thing that I really wanted to like understand your thought process, like dropping out of school, how did you make such a bold move? How did you make that decision that you're gonna like put all your eggs in the Catalyst basket?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I have many answers to this question. I mean, you can imagine it's something I thought about a lot. I wasn't just like, hey, like school's boring, I'm gonna leave. Like it wasn't it wasn't like that. It was obviously calculated, but I still get asked this question every day by friends, family member, like you name it. When you make a decision like that, that's just kind of what you ask for. And so I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I definitely have a lot of answers. The first is, I guess I would dive into like how we think about education. I think education is commonly thought of as like sort of a one size fits all approach when it comes to higher education, right? Um, but I know that we all know in this call that higher education was built to get us good jobs at big companies, like entry level jobs at big companies, which is awesome. And a lot of people should do that. A lot of people should pursue that sense of stability. Like stability is awesome. I think every day about how great stability would be. I just, tried it with a couple of different jobs. I tried those types of jobs and basically found out that it wasn't for me. And so I guess my point is that higher education serves a more specific purpose than people think. A lot of the curriculum itself, the classes themselves, obviously like not going to be something that like super drives your career forward in a meaningful way. They're usually going to be something that you learn, you forget, and all of it is to get this piece of paper that helps you get those jobs, which is awesome. If that's what you're after. Um, and I had basically, I had pretty much decided, I had discerned at this point, having been full time on Catalyst for a number of months, and also working what on paper should have been my dream job at Techstars, and realizing that, even then, jobs are just jobs. After all of that discernment, I pretty much realized like building is where I want to be. And if there's anything I've learned since I've started and since I've been in school while building, working jobs while building, the only thing that gets me any better at that or makes it more likely that I can secure that as a sustainable career long term is actually just doing it and like diving into the hard challenges and like taking real responsibility for that. And so that was where I was at going back to school in the spring. I basically was at a point where I didn't really see like what the degree was going to get for me long term, knowing that, like I said, building was where I wanted to be. The other thing, so here's a common one that people will throw at you if you're talking about dropping out, is it's a safety net. It's an insurance policy. You're burning a bridge you don't have to burn. Like you guys get the point. Um, and so some of like the people I listen to and like the mentors that I've had and things like that have taught me that the insurance policy is just your own skills and basically like who you are as a person and what you're capable of doing. And I think like people grow the most when they take the most responsibility for something they care the most about. And I was at a point where school was, I mean, first of all, it was hard for me to bring myself to care about it. It was hard for me to take full responsibility for it. Like, just to be 100% honest, I was not being 100% honest in how I completed my work at school. Like, I was definitely cheating on stuff, and I mean, everybody is at a lot of like, at least at my business school and in a lot of schools. A lot of people are honest too. I don't want to like make a blanket statement,
Yeah.
but and this isn't so just in terms of me and how I was pursuing my education. I didn't really like to be in that position where I felt like I had to dishonestly like do my work. You know what I mean? Whether it was like needed for a safety net or whatever it was, um, there was really no way for me to like sustainably push Catalyst forward while like being a full time student and do both of those things like perfectly honestly. And so that didn't like make me feel great. You know what I mean? Like especially if we're paying for that education and I was out of state. So basically what I came to realize was like Catalyst and just building things in general is the thing I care the most about. Is like the responsibility that I want to take on that I feel like builds my skills in the fastest and most meaningful way. And so if I pursue that full time, that's just going to accelerate. And whether or not it works out, those skills are going to stick with me, and that's going to be my safety net rather than a career that, or rather than a degree that I don't think directly ties to my long term career anyway. So that's my sort of long winded answer to that question. And I mean, this is something I always say, and Ramya has probably heard this 100 times, which is that I am not the dropping out person. uh, I
You
do
know,
not.
you
I,
summarized that answer very well by giving us a playbook of how not to drop out from a college. Mine is, but an entrepreneurship journey is based on so many different milestones that you cover across the journey.
right.
Starting with having the right idea or the right mindset. To like you rightly said, people who are interested in a VC are generally more interested in starting their own startup or having their own business. But
Yes.
that business needs to come from an idea that's been cultivated in a mindset of solving problems, which is the most important thing. In that journey, I have a small question. I would love to have a very brief answer or a very. I mean, you have answered all our questions so nicely. I'm definitely sure you have a great answer for this one. But a lot of people are bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, and but they don't know what to build. They don't know what to find, where to find the idea, and if they find the idea, then how to pursue it. So how important it is to how to find something that you really want to build.
I think you find it right at home. I think so. One of the best things that I ever heard about pivoting, and this is tangentially related, is pivoting is like going home. Like pivoting a startup is like going home, meaning uh, it's going more and more towards the problem that you've known about the whole time. And so I think like everybody has. So people will write themselves off as like not creative. Um, I'm not, whatever, a business person. I don't have like the business mind. I'm not a deep thinker. Blah 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 blah. Everybody has like a very unique set of experiences, of knowledge, of skills, you know what I mean, that sort of put them in a unique position to have some sort of idea. Now, whether or not like the idea is good right away, who knows? But nobody knows until you try to get it in the hands of customers, which is another thing that I'm very passionate about and can talk about for a long time. But I think that so when we go through sort of the startup idea framework that we have in Catalyst, the first thing that we tell people to do is to pick an interest that they have. Um, and then the rest of the steps. So I can just like lay out the steps really briefly for our startup idea framework. And I don't expect that this like ultimately gives somebody a light bulb moment and they're like, boom, I'm going to like go and start this huge company. But in terms of helping people think through it, this is what we say is pick an interest that you have, find out what people with that interest want. So if you're in a room of people who all have this interest in common with you and you say, hey, everybody, I have XYZ. What would they say? Oh my gosh, like I'm in. Kind of like on LinkedIn when somebody posts like list of 100 internships. All the students on LinkedIn are like, what? Like the post like blows up
Yeah.
because you're in a community where everybody has this common interest of getting internships, getting jobs. So that's question two. Find out what people with that interest want. Third is find out what's in the way of them getting it, and then the fourth is how can you remove that barrier. And to answer your original question and to like go back to what I first said, like you find it at home. Um, you have to find it in the thing that you like actually know about and care about. And I think so many people are like, you just have to find a problem. You just have to find a big problem, a market gap, like solve a problem in the market, uh, which yes is true. But if it's like you just want to start a business in order to like have a thing that makes money, and you're looking for like this market gap, and uh, you don't feel a personal tie to it, it like doesn't seriously like make a difference to your livelihood whether or not this problem is solved. And then it doesn't work right away, which by the way, it never ever will. So if it doesn't work right away, um, then you pivot, and you don't have the resilience that it takes to actually stick through with something. Like I'm not going to act like Catalyst has just been like sunshine and rainbows the whole time and like the super successful business. Like we're still very much in the building stage, and we've been through a lot of challenges. We're going through challenges right now, and I am extremely grateful to find something that I care enough about to stick through those things with, and be able to like see a long term vision in terms of like what we're aiming towards. But if it would have been almost anything else, I don't think that would have been the case. I think I, I probably would have stopped a long time ago. And so I think the best ideas are not the ones that can work. It's the ones that the people, it's the ones that the founders can actually make work themselves. And those are ones that the founder actually needs to feel a close tie to, like I said, in order to have the resilience to see it through. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
You just touched base upon the importance of founders having certain qualities or mindset. A question based on that would be, in your experience till date, you know, have you seen any certain traits or qualities that have led founders to be successful in their ventures?
Uh, you know, so that's a really good question. One one interesting one that I've seen, and this is not a blanket statement, but I just was surprised to find this out over time. Um, so they say like carrot and stick. There are things you run towards, and there are things you run away from when it comes to your goals. And this is just like a first interesting. I don't think this is like the answer, but this is just an interesting answer that came to mind when you mentioned this. I've noticed a lot of people who are building or who want to build just really really don't want day jobs. Like they either like did an internship or like they did a job and they were like, oh, it sucked. Like I can't go back. Like this has to work because I can't do that. Or like employee, me for sure. Like I'm not gonna
I
like
can put my hand for that.
right, you know what I'm talking about, yeah. And so like the thing with Techstars was like, yes, I did quit. I decided to leave, but like I'm not going to act like they wanted me to stay. Like I wasn't a great employee, and I've noticed this like across the board with a lot of people who are interested in building stuff is like when they're in that setting where obviously everything's kind of being laid out for them, they don't have a lot of intellectual freedom over their work. Um, it can drive some people mad, and so that's one thing that I've seen is like just an adversity to traditional jobs and like almost like a need to be able to build their career around themselves and their goals. Um, and I would say like a level beneath that. I mean, the other thing, and I don't want to sound like too basic or like cliche or anything, um, but the value of ambition can't be overstated. I think like ambition is just wanting to do more than what is required, right? And I don't think everybody like should be an entrepreneur. I don't think everybody um, necessarily wants to be. I think a lot of people say they want to be. I don't think everybody necessarily wants to be. I think a lot of people are perfectly content, just like going through the motions of the career that they've had planned out their entire lives, getting the grades, getting the job, providing, having that stability, and I think that's amazing. Um, I just think that what I've seen for people who really, really want to build and are like really about it is kind of an adversity to that and like wanting to just like push their limits, like what's out there, like how many hard things can I do as an individual and like how much of it can go well? And the answer is not much, especially at first. But yeah, just like the value of that ambition, like being willing to like go in uncharted territory, um, is another answer, I guess, too.
I was just reading about something regarding successful founders, and it mentioned one thing. It's all about doing the boring thing every day.
Yes,
You've
yes.
got to do it. If you
Oh
really
gosh.
want it, you've got to do the boring thing every day.
Oh gosh.
That's what
Yeah.
probably builds the discipline and the mindset towards cultivating, or building that startup or that particular product.
Yeah, I saw a great tweet recently from Alex Hormozy. He said the work starts when the motivation ends, and
Yeah.
that's 100% true. I think there's like an idealist, and obviously I speak a little bit idealistically around like what it means to build something and start something you're passionate about. Um, but just to go into like the caveats and like give people like fair warnings before they get into this sort of thing, like the motivation will not always be there. Like there's going to be days when you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to reach out to 100 people today. Like I'd basically rather do anything else. but uh, but like being able to see the long term goal, because
Yeah.
discipline, of course, is delaying immediate gratification in pursuit of a long term goal, and being able to like put that perspective on your work is essential. And it goes back to what we talked about like having an idea that you're passionate about. But it's definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. There's definitely like I remember having this really funny moment. Where I talk about like being a spreadsheet warrior at my old internships and like how it's like so boring. Um, so Catalyst is built on basically a bunch of like no code tech that I had to figure out how to scramble together over like the course of a couple months. Basically a combination of Airtable, this other thing called Softer. But basically like Catalyst as a company almost like lives in Airtable. Like so much of our like data and stuff. Which by the way, for anybody listening, I would totally recommend looking into those tools, Airtable and Softer, to like get something out there fast. Very useful. Um, but I remember realizing like, wow, the past like 4 weeks, I've basically been doing nothing but sitting in like these spreadsheets, figuring out like how to piece this thing together. Like
Yeah.
I'm right back where I started.
So
um,
it helped.
but obviously different because of what I'm trying to accomplish with those spreadsheets and where I see those things going. But yes, to your point, um, definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot of non-glamorous work that you have to do, and I would say that was one of the biggest turning points for me. Was like when I started and had a co-founder, we could split a lot of the work. I wasn't like really willing to like dive into like the super hard stuff. I definitely wasn't. I don't think I was like. I definitely wasn't productively working all day, but I don't think I was just working all day in general. I mean, it took a long time to get to the point where like I was willing to do basically whatever seemed like the necessary next step. So, which I definitely have a little bit more to say about that. But yeah, all that to say, I could not agree more with what you just said.
No, and you actually sort of brought in my next question very organically. Like you did mention motivation and like how that doesn't last, but what are the other like things which newcomers who people who just started building don't know and they're gonna expect it to be like very different? Or like what sort of advice would you give to people who are just starting to build, especially in that -1 to 1 phase?
Oh, understand that you know nothing at all. That would be my number one piece of advice that I wish I would have understood sooner. Like I think the best builders do a job that anybody could have done. Meaning, like they basically decided to put themselves in a place where they are gathering data, making decisions based off that data, pushing it out, gathering data on that, making decisions based off it, pushing it out. You know what I mean? And basically, in this constant cycle of like experimentation and iteration, I think that's basically a founder's job. Um, and when you start and have just no background or no like experimentation whatsoever, you just don't have the data to like make great decisions. Plus you don't have years of experience under your belt. Obviously you don't have like uh, contrary to popular belief, you actually need skills to like make a business work.
Yeah.
Only way to build those. And so what I've heard from some people about like what the main skills are: building, selling, and leading. um, and in terms of like definition of each of those, that's a whole nother can of worms. But I think that when I started, I was like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like make this thing work. I started this club at my school. It went good. And I think like coming from a successful high school career, like relatively successful college career so far, I was just used to like things working out. Um, and so I was like, yeah, we're just gonna like keep making good decisions, and it's just always gonna work. Um, and I think the first time that it doesn't, you're like, what the hell's going on? Um, and I think the sooner that you accept that, like, that's just what happens, and it's because you don't know anything, but you just have to keep pushing, and you will. If you just keep pushing and build the skills, like, everybody had to go through it. Everybody who started a business had to go through it. And so, like, if you just keep pushing, like, working that out of your system, paying down that ignorance tax, um, and like I said, just completely working all that out of your system, um, knowing that it's going to take a little while, I think that helps so much. And I was not in that place when I started, and I would say like nothing real happened until I was. So I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that makes perfect sense.
I think that's the difference between like an employee mindset and a builder's mindset as well.
Yes.
But
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and like,
I think, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of people who there are a lot of entrepreneurs who try to start companies and it doesn't work um, as well as they had hoped. And a lot of these people are smart, like could have been really good at a lot of things, um, and chose entrepreneurship. And I think if you do that, you have to understand that you're choosing like the much harder path that you're more likely to just like not be good at right away. Because nobody's good right away. No one's. I don't think anybody's just like naturally good. Some people get lucky for sure, um, but nobody's just naturally good. And so like those people, like people who have had successful high school careers, successful college careers, like expect things to keep going well. I mean, are at that point where they're maybe like making that decision of like, do I prioritize building? Do I prioritize um, jobs? Understanding that building, like you are choosing the thing that you're going to be worse at, and you have to do it with the hope and the expectation that it's going to grow you more than the other thing would. And I think that's a whole nother thing about like just the growth mindset in general. Um, but I don't think I understood that well enough in the beginning. And I think that a lot of people would be better suited to go in with that mindset of like, this is going to be harder than anything else I could do. It's probably not going to work, but I'm just going to keep pushing until like I become who I want to be. So
That's true. Yeah.
I think we're almost like out of time, but I had one last question if I could just sneak that in.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
so like, you need to prioritize at all times. And like, so what sort of strategies do you use to actually maintain that creativity to grow the business while sort of like, doing those routine tasks that need to be done?
Yeah, that is a perfect question, and definitely something I'm like constantly grappling with. There's always going to be like so. I try to start the day with the things that I don't want to do but have to do, and end the day with the things that I want to do, so that I basically have something to look forward to when I wake up, and I'm motivated to get the things I have to do done faster. So it's like outreach, for example. Right now, something we're trying is like reaching out to students one on one. It's basically like finding impressive students on LinkedIn, saying like, "Hey, will this be something that makes sense with where you're at?" And having those one-on-one conversations to find out, how do students value this? How can we make it better for people? So obviously, sending those messages. I would not say that that's the most fun thing that I've done since we started this. uh,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's not a complaint. Like I do love the process of like finding those students and like making contact and sort of like trying to involve them in what we do here. Um, but it's obviously very different than like so one thing that I do a lot, and Ram, knows about this, is I write a lot for our students. I try to put everything that I've learned, everything that people way smarter than me have told me, into like concise essays, articles, like you name it, as resources for our students to be like more digestible, and basically get people to the end result faster. And I like love doing that. So sometimes I'll set up my day where like those things like outreach or like those spreadsheet warrior type tasks or like IT work that I have to do because I'm wearing a lot of hats, um, are happening in the morning, and I do that with full knowledge that like, okay, if I get this done by this time, I'm going to be able to like go to Starbucks and get my brown sugar oat milk shake and espresso and open up my laptop and write a banging article. You know what I mean? So that's what I like to do. Like for me, and I think for most entrepreneurs, brand building is, or at least most like business side entrepreneurs, like non-technical, I guess, but even some technical. Like I think the brand building is like really the fun part for me, and the education, and then a lot of like the more back end stuff is yeah. So in terms of how to prioritize, I mean, I think it just comes naturally. Like you just need to be honest with yourself. There's going to be times when like you don't get to do anything you want to do for like weeks on end. But if that's what's needed for the business, it's just what it has to be. So I think just going in with an open mind, like I said, being ready to like gather that data, make decisions about what you need to do, and being honest with yourself. And um, yeah, I think that's what it's all about. And if you're gonna like lose motivation if you don't get to do any of like the super fun stuff, then like yeah, throw some of that in there. You know what I mean? You can take a week and like if like making content is the thing you like to do, like make some content. Um, but it's just about like being honest with yourself about what needs to be done, and also tracking KPIs and looking at what affects those too.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I didn't want to
That
like
makes
say that right away because I'm sure like a million people always say that. But the number one prioritization like tool is definitely a KPI. And so like to do something and say like this isn't going to change the KPI in any way, either directly or indirectly. It's like okay, well maybe it's not the time for that.
What you've been saying is amazing and like very helpful to me and Nandan as well, actually. Like, even though I
Yeah.
didn't, you just have like so much information to share. But that's great. Thank you so much.
I mean, Ramya has done the Catalyst Excel Fellowship. I am in process of enrolling for the Catalyst Excel Fellowship. So yeah, I think
All
I'm
right.
going to connect more in coming weeks.
Now he's more
Absolutely.
convinced.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. All right. Well, gear up for February.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so
But
much.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I've had a ton of fun. And yeah, thank you.